31 inmates have died in custody at the Marion County Jail over the past 4 years. Most of those deaths were investigated only by the sheriff's office, without independent review by outside agencies. Darrell Davidson's story is one of them. Jail records reveal contradictions, omissions, and discrepancies too large to ignore. Even without access to his medical records, the evidence we do have reveals troubling gaps in accountability. At 5:41 a.m. on October 13th, 39-year-old Darrell Davidson was booked into the Marion County Jail on a misdemeanor charge of criminal mischief. Intake records noted blisters on his feet and an abrasion to his forehead. Davidson had been receiving methadone treatment. However, jail records state that on the day of his booking, the methadone clinic reported that he tested positive for marijuana and therefore refused to continue dosing him while he is incarcerated. According to the United States Department of Justice guidelines for managing substance withdrawals in jails, polysubstance use is not a contraindication for treating opioid withdrawal, and urine drug screen results should not be used to deny patients access to medications for opioid withdrawal. The Department of Justice states that methadone withdrawal symptoms typically begin within 30 hours of the last dose and may persist for approximately 10 days, often presenting with agitation, anxiety, and a range of other physical symptoms. Later that evening at 10 p.m., Davidson refused an order to remain on his bunk. Deputies placed him in hand restraints and escorted him to the recreation yard. When he attempted to pull away from the officer, he was taken to the ground. No injuries were documented from this first use of force incident. At 11:30 p.m. on the following day, Davidson was seen standing at the cell window with blood on his face. A nurse noted 2 injuries, including a small cut on the bridge of his nose and a small cut on the left side of his head. He was placed on suicide precaution in the infirmary. Aside from these 2 minor cuts, the only other injuries documented in jail records to date are the abrasion to his forehead and the blisters on his feet that were documented at booking the previous morning. On his 3rd day of incarceration, medical staff noted that Davidson was exhibiting bizarre behavior and banging on the door and yelling. At 7:23 a.m., Davidson refused to comply with a strip search and squat and cough order, resulting in him being pepper sprayed in the face. He continued to resist and was put into a headlock and given several physical strikes to the torso. In response, Davidson kicked an officer, leading to him being tased. 7 officers responded to his cell to physically restrain him. Davidson was given a decontamination shower and placed in a restraint chair. Photographs taken immediately after the second use of force show the pre-existing abrasion to Davidson's forehead, the small cut to the left side of his head, and the small pre-existing cut on the bridge of his nose that was documented the day before by the nursing staff. However, these images show that the nose appears bruised, swollen, and visibly broken. Active bleeding from the nose or mouth can be seen, and a bag containing blood is held next to Davidson's face, suggesting an acute injury requiring medical attention. Bruising is visible on both knees, along with active bleeding from a wound on his left heel. Additional bruises can be seen on his upper left arm, lower left wrist, and both shoulders. His chest and torso also appear to be red and swollen. The official report includes a body diagram of injuries documented by jail medical staff following the use of force against Davidson. The nurse's medical evaluation identifies only 1 new injury, a small wound at the impact site of a single taser probe on his back. The diagram appears to account for all injuries visible in the photographs, except for the bleeding wounds to his feet, the bruising to his lower left wrist, and potentially the true severity and extent of the injury to his nose. Aside from those omissions, the report categorizes all observable injuries as pre-existing. Even though photographs depict active bleeding, and there was no prior documentation of injuries to his shoulders, arms, or legs before this incident. Furthermore, Marion County Sheriff's Office Policy 6635 requires that inmates in a restraint chair be checked by medical personnel every hour. According to the official use of force report, the medical liaison was notified as there were 2 missed nurse checks at 8:50 and 9:50 a.m. The inspection of confinement form shows that Davidson went without medical supervision for more than 2 hours, from 7:53 a.m. until 10:07 a.m. The following day, on October 16th at 1:30 p.m., jail reports indicate that Davidson was requesting pain medication. The nurse stated that inmate Davidson had been moaning most of the shift and increased his persistence in crying for help. Davidson reportedly told the nurse, "Somebody help. I can't do this. This is inhuman. Make it be over with. I don't know what to do. I need an ambulance. I should be in the hospital. I'm going to overdose on ibuprofen. I promise you. Don't get mad at what happens next." A Baker Act was never initiated. Rather, a mental health counselor was brought in to speak with him. No jail incidents were documented between October 16th and the 21st. The only documentation reflecting this time period is in reference to the medical examiner's inquiry into his injuries, in which the report states that all entries past October 15th were not significant and were about the decedent becoming sick and unresponsive. At 7:51 a.m. on October 22nd, Davidson was found lying under his bunk. He was told to come to the door to comply with a strip search, but refused. Deputies entered the cell and pulled him out by his feet. He was told to put his hands behind his back, but he resisted, resulting in a deputy delivering 2 knee strikes to his right thigh. Deputies conducted the strip search and reported finding a large amount of urine on Davidson's clothes, mattress, bedding, and the floor. Davidson was placed in the shower at 8:23 a.m. when his condition began to deteriorate. By 8:25, he'd been moved to a bench where deputies observed that he could no longer hold himself upright and eventually slid to the floor. Nurses responded to assess him and reportedly advised deputies that he should be moved to the infirmary. Dr. Rodriguez did not allow him to be transferred because he did not want inmates housed in the infirmary for medical observation anymore. The jail report goes on to state that the nurse appeared uneasy about the decision to leave him in the pod. Despite Dr. Rodriguez's orders, Sergeant Nelson, with approval from Lieutenant Peterson, decided that Davidson would be rehoused in the infirmary for observation. At 1:37 p.m., while in the infirmary, Davidson was found lying on the floor of his cell, unresponsive and discolored. A code red was called at 1:39 p.m. Chest compressions began immediately until EMS arrived at 1:50. Davidson was then transported to Advent Health Hospital. At 8:49 p.m. that evening, Darrell Davidson was pronounced dead. The doctor at Advent reported that Davidson had multiple organ failure resulting in brain death. The medical examiner's office conducted an autopsy on October 24th and determined the manner of death to be natural, citing myeloproliferative disorder with features suggestive of myeloid leukemia. The medical examiner also identified approximately 50 wounds on Darrell Davidson's body in their autopsy report. Those injuries included fractured nasal bones, a 9-inch bruise on the left torso, a 5-inch bruise to the right upper arm, a 6-inch bruise to the left forearm, and a 4-inch bruise above the left elbow, along with dozens of other bruises, lacerations, and abrasions. However, on 8:14 a.m. on the day of his death, following the third and final use of force, a nurse assessed Davidson. He was found to have no new injuries, only 4 pre-existing injuries. including a cut on the top of his nose, a cut above his left eye, and wounds on both of his feet. Yet photographs documenting his condition tell a different story. They show deep wounds on both feet and a visible injury to his nose. The cut above his left eye, listed as pre-existing, had never been noted in prior jail records. The images also reveal a black eye that was not recorded by the nurse. Because of the way the photographs were framed, any additional injuries to his body are obscured from view. A review of jail records show that according to jail and medical staff, the only new injuries ever sustained by Davidson during his incarceration were the self-inflicted small cuts to the bridge of his nose and the left side of his head on October 14th, and the puncture wound on his back from a single taser probe on October 15th. Due to the unusually high number of injuries found on Davidson's body, medical examiner's office investigator Newbanks was tasked with completing a review of the medical records for any documentation into their origin. It should be noted that the medical examiner's office concluded that the injuries were not associated with the cause of death. Investigator Newbanks summarized the jail incident and use of force reports, noting only a handful of injuries in his findings. He referenced the foot blisters and a facial abrasion documented at booking on October 13th. No injuries were reported during the first use of force that evening in the recreation yard. On October 14th, he cited self-inflicted injuries to Davidson's face, nose, and head when Davidson was found standing in the window with blood on his face. For the significant October 15th use of force incident, Newbanks noted only that Davidson was pepper sprayed and tased, making no mention of the 8 pre-existing injuries visible in photographs or recorded on the body diagram from that day. He further reported that no injuries were sustained after October 15th. In conclusion, it was determined that Davidson's external physical injuries of the face and body were the result of self-injury, banging his head, or from use of force from noncompliance, such as the bruising on his torso. The injuries on the feet and at least one abrasion on the forehead were pre-existing before being incarcerated. Even with significant gaps in the explanation of Davidson's injuries and their lack of documentation, the sheriff's office determined no further investigation was necessary. Corporal Pinder affirmed that the investigation into Davidson's death remained closed. Dr. Jose Rodriguez, contracted through Heart of Florida as the medical director of the Marion County Jail, refused to admit Davidson to the infirmary for medical observation just hours before he was found unresponsive. That refusal was omitted from the official death investigation report. Instead, the report contradicts the jail's own incident records, stating that the nursing staff decided the decedent would be rehoused in the infirmary for observation.